Welcome to the Black Magic Woman podcast with Mundanara Bayles.
When you look at our mob, everyone thought we were just going to die out, but we haven't.
Probably the most adaptable people on the planet.
It's this emergence of this humanality again that I find so enriching.
Be wise, be wise, be wise. Look at ways to cost save so that at the end of the day, your door's still open.
Wadamuli, and thanks for joining. You're listening to Mundanara Bayles, and my guest today is Uncle Mick Gooda. And before we start, Uncle Mick, it's important, that first and foremost, we follow proper protocol and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're gathering on today. And I'm on Cubby Cubby country, also known as Gubby Gubby country, here on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. And I also want to acknowledge elders past and present. And over to you, Uncle.
Same, Mundanara. I'm a Gungaloo man on my mother's side. I think we're same mob on that side, me and you. And
we are.
We are. And on my dad's side, I'm Yemen, so my people are really concentrated in central Queensland. We didn't venture far outside that area, but at the moment I'm in Mullinjali country, down past Perga Mission, on a farm overlooking the limestone ridges. So,
Uncle Mick, Perga Mission is in Queensland, right? Just outside of Ipswich.
It's in Queensland. It's outside Ipswich. It was one of the first missions in Queensland, Perga. Lots of people got taken into Perga from all around, same as my grandfather was in the Taroom mission back in 1926 when the government decided they were going to build a dam, and they shifted people out of Taroom mission into Cherbourg, and then half the mob went to Cherbourg, half the other mob walked about 250 kilometres and to where Woorabinda is now. And when they got to Woorabinda, my people were still living on country then.
Mm-hmm.
So we got big connections through that part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But Perga was like Taroom mission. They brought people from all over northern New South Wales, way out west of Queensland, into both Perga and Taroom missions. So they were really big missions back in the day.
Uncle, I just saw a book recently that I'll have to give you about Taroom mission.
Oh, I'd love to see it, yeah.
It's got all of there's all of this evidence in this book from an archaeologist and from some, Murray fellas.
Yeah.
Talking about the history of Taroom mission, and they've done this kind of aerial imaging of the land, and where these old Murray fellas had identified where certain things were built, the aerial image actually was not even a metre away from where they said things were, and this is going back 70 years ago, Uncle.
Yeah, well, I went out there for the Taroom for the Yemen determination, native title determination, and Marcia Langton's also Yemen,
Mm-hmm.
and her daughter Ruby was there. So the people who own the property where the mission was took Ruby and I out to have a look, and there's not much out there now, but you got, as soon as you get there, you get that eerie feeling that you sort of get when you go and you belong somewhere, because that's my dad's side, Yemen.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really interesting. I was there for that determination, and biggest mob of black fellas, from all over central Queensland and further afield were there. And when the judge got up and said, "I'm not here to give you native title," and everyone's face dropped, and we were looking at each other, and he said, "I can't give you something you've owned for thousands of years. All I'm doing today is recognising your ownership in Australian law," which was really powerful. It's not something government can give us. It's like sovereignty. People say, "Oh, we want government to give us sovereignty." If you're trying to do that, you're looking in the wrong direction. We assert sovereignty. We don't wait for people to give it to us.
Of course.
So I thought that was a really interesting comment by the
judge,
Justice Reeves, at that determination, and like all mobs across Australia, we have a pretty sad history there. There was a massacre out that way. There were reprisals that went on for like 40 years. So if you were Aboriginal in those areas, you just got shot back in the day. So sad places.
Yeah. Well, that uncle, in that book that I just saw, Brother Adam Bray, you probably come across Adam. He's a Gungaloo man as well.
Yeah.
He actually gave me this book. I ran into him randomly on the Gold Coast was there for the Indigenous All-Stars game. And Brother Walker towards me, 9:00 at night after having dinner somewhere at Southport. He said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Here, Meriton." And next minute in the morning, he came down and gave me this book about Taroom Mission. And Uncle...
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Oh, look, I've got a copy for you. I went out and took a copy to Anililla straight away. And all of the family names are in that book. But what also was there on this, it's cattle property, right? Was a whole lot of remains, skeletal remains. Yeah. So obviously that was either a massacre site where all those bodies were either dumped or buried, or that was the graveyard.
Yeah.
Either way, there was the story from the Murrays from that area who were telling stories that had been passed down, right?
Yep.
And it just matched up with exactly what they were saying when the aerial imaging came over.
Yeah. I'd believe that. I'd absolutely believe that. Because Adam was actually with Ruby and I that day. We went to look at the property, the old mission. But you never guessed we were sitting there and they were cutting trees down. I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Well, after nearly 100 years, they're finally going to build a dam out here." So, Queensland has this history of moving Aboriginal people to build things, and then they don't do it. So the dam in Taroom and of course the big port they were going to build at Marpoon shifted all them people back in the 1960s, and burnt the place down and then never built the port.
Mm-hmm. It's all there, isn't it, Uncle?
It's still there. I was up there just before Christmas at Marpoon. Sad place, when you feel the history. But sad in one way, but also shows the resilience of our mob. They're not giving up. They're sitting there, and if it's reminding the rest of Australia of what happened, good, because we need reminding.
And when you talk about resilience, Uncle, it just brings me back to this current climate, current situation that we're in today in this country, which is this COVID-19. And, Uncle, you being on the board of Murray School, and the history of Murray School with our family, Uncle Ross Watson, my grandmother's brother, was the founder of the Murray School.
Yeah.
And until recently, Dad was still chair of the Murray School.
Yeah.
And I'm a past student. I graduated at the Murray School in 1994. In Year 7, there was about 11, no, not even 11 kids, Uncle. There might have been about 6 of us in grade 7 that graduated.
Wow.
And, for me, there was probably 25 kids in the school at the time. So for me to be a past student of the school and also be on the board, it's an absolute honour. It's been part of our family's legacy. And I guess I just want to say to people that are listening to this podcast that there's all these different directions that this yarn can go into. But the first thing that I wanted to mention is that we have reconnected in terms of me and you reconnected because we're both on the board of the Murray School.
That's right.
In light of what's going on today, I just thought you'd be a perfect person to have a yarn with.
Well, we have a few connections. One is our mob, Gungaloo mob. The second is the Murray School, but thirdly, I'm remembering being interviewed by your dad lots of times when I was at the Cooperative Research Centre for Aboriginal Health, and then when I joined the Human Rights Commission. So, like your dad was one of the great advocates and would get us on to a whole range of people on his programs to make sure our mob out there were as informed as they could be about what was happening. So I think it's sort of that symmetry we talk about, and the family connections and all that. We all sort of join together and say it's a small world, but our world's different to that, where you have these connections all through our generations.
Of course.
And this is the latest iteration. You and I on the Murray School board.
I know.
Past student. It's just great.
And here with COVID-19, Black Card, the business that I run with my grandmother's sister, Annie Lilla Watson, and the other elders involved, Annie Mary Graham and Uncle Charlie Watson, I've been I guess it's not been forced into a position of trying to reinvent our services or reinvent our business. But to me, starting this podcast was about doing exactly, I guess, what Dad was doing. Yeah. How do we engage with our mob, and how do we share stories of resilience and stories that might be challenging but also inspiring? So through all of the tough times at the moment that we're facing and that we will continue to face for who knows how long, how do we stay positive? How do we get through these times? And how do we, I guess, inspire and lift each other so that we can get through this together?
I'm so glad to see you doing this, because it's, Aboriginal people have this oral history, and we love telling stories, and we get messages through stories, before you know it. I know when I was growing up, I'd listen to mum and dad and my nan and grandfather talking, and aunties and uncles. And when I look back now, they weren't just stories, they were actually telling you lessons. They were giving you lessons through those stories. And I think the medium may have changed. We're using 21st century media like podcasts, but the concept's exactly the same. It's getting the message out, talking to people, and I sort of agree with this fella from America. He wrote about business, and he challenged Darwin's theory of evolution and survival of the fittest and the strongest and the smartest. And his view was the people who are the most adaptable survive. And when you look at our mob, we have adapted. Everyone thought we were just going to die out, but we haven't. We're the fastest growing cohort within the Australian community right now. So we're adapting, and we're just I'd love to see how you're adapting this now to getting the message out with lots of stories. So, and the story of what we're going through right now, we've never seen anything like this in our time, and we'll survive this. We'll adapt. We'll get on. We'll make sure the Murray School operates as an outreach service if they close schools down. We'll keep connected with our students. We'll keep connected with the staff, and we'll keep connected with our families. It'll be just a different way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to say that, you and I have had many yarns, offline and during board meetings and whatever, but we've had many yarns about how we could do more in our community, how we can support our community, how we can, I guess, partner with other service providers like the medical services and the Institute, IUE and people like that. So in terms of this current situation, Uncle, we were having a yarn before, and you were talking about some of the young kids that are in these boarding schools. Can you share some of the story with me?
Well, there hasn't been, in Queensland at least, closing down of schools, but up north I'm aware of, boarding schools, with the majority of whom are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, and parents wanted them home straight away, which is understandable. The Prime Minister made a statement on Sunday night saying we're not closing schools, but if parents are uncomfortable with their kids being at school, take them home, look after them. And I think that's what the mob up north wanted to do. And but same with bureaucracy. There was problems getting their flights back and all that. But again, that's now back on track. So these things are happening right now as we speak, and I understand. You can understand how parents are worried about their kids right in the middle of this pandemic, and they want them home, and that's why it's going to happen, and that's why we'll operate at the Murray School.
I saw something come through from our principal this morning, and it was a PowerPoint, which is really deadly.
It's great, isn't it?
The communication, it's constant that we're getting these updates as a board, right? on what our deputies are doing. Can you share some information about that?
Well, last week we had a meeting. It looked like there was a move to close the school down. I talked to all the board members. We went there with the view that, and said it to all the staff, that our main concern was our students and our staff. Without those, we don't have a school, and we will make the decisions in the best interests of both the students and the staff. But we've got to make fully informed decisions about where we are. And there was a bit of a move to close the school, but we said, no, let's work on this, because there's risks of our children being at school, but there's also risks of them not being at school. And we've got to manage those risks. And I got no doubt somewhere in the near future they will close the schools. But when they do, the Murray School is going to be in a better position than most. We have some things that are really positive for us to keep the connection going. For instance, 90% of our kids are picked up by buses. So we've got buses from the school visiting houses and homes twice a day, pick up kids in the morning, drop them off in the afternoon. So we're used to connecting with houses and households and homes and parents and carers. We know that as soon as that happens, we can reach out and let our parents know and our carers know exactly what's happening straight away. If we have to close the school, we'll be able to get out there. We now had a long conversation today with the Catholic Education Commission, because with their schools, they're in the same position as us. They'll probably close shortly when the government makes a call. But both of us are thinking about not actually closing the school, but transitioning from a learning environment at a school to a learning environment at home. And how do we actually do that? And like you said, our deputies have done a wonderful job getting packages together that we can deliver. We're looking at maybe some sort of IT solutions, like if we have to dip into our savings and make sure kids have got tablets, and if they don't have internet, preload them with lessons.
Uncle, I was just about to say that. Sorry to cut you off. I was just about to say, in terms of the digital divide with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and families, not every blackfella has a laptop or a computer at home, or a parent that has access to devices and iPads and whatever.
And then even before you mention internet being available.
Exactly. So here we are in terms of the Murray School. For people that are not familiar with the Murray School's location, it's in Acacia Ridge in Brisbane, here in Queensland. And it's one of very few Aboriginal schools that are run independently in this country, that are operated by community. There's a board that runs this school. So in terms of the school, and like you said, dipping into savings to make sure that our kids have access to technology so that they can keep on engaging with their learning, this is new for us, isn't it?
Oh, totally new. And we know we might have to look around to get devices for our children and our households. And if they don't, like I said, if they don't have access to internet, we can preload lessons on tablets or laptops or whatever we end up with.
Yeah.
And then there would have to be connection with the teachers still. So even though our view is that even if the school closes to students, it doesn't shut down altogether, because we expect our teachers, and the teachers are absolutely up for this, to keep the connection going with our students and families. So it's just another of those cases, Mundanara, where I said we were the most adaptable people. We will adapt to this.
Of course we will. And just talking about the education and trying to set up this kind of outreach service and making sure that the home environment is supported with technology and devices. If corporate Australia is listening to this podcast, in terms of donating devices or I don't know what it is, but I'm just thinking for people like Google that might be listening, Black Card engages with many corporate clients that we roll out our training to. Is there a message there for corporate Australia to get involved and to support our school to support Aboriginal people and communities in the Aboriginal business sector. What's your thoughts, Uncle?
Well, look, I think this is a crisis like we've never lived before. There's going to, I was just reading today, there's going to be 1 million people unemployed. You look at Qantas, they laid 20,000 people off. We've closed all sporting venues down, those people, and a lot of our mob used to get casual work at those venues. That's no longer possible. They're closing down hotels and cafes and restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
If there's opportunities to do things a little bit differently and you need extra sets of hands, think about the Aboriginal Torres Strait Island community. Reach out to people like the Murray School and the organisations in your area to see what's going on. Because we're certainly thinking about that, Mundanara. You and I have had the discussion of if in this outreach program we need extra people, we're going to put them on, because not only do we outreach to our kids, but we actually provide employment for someone. If we need extra people in the family support unit that we run at the school, because the overwhelming need, we'll do that. So I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to commit to not only providing the services, but in providing the service, if you need to employ someone, do it straight away. You're giving people an opportunity. I went past Ipswich yesterday, and it was so sad to see this line outside the social services or whatever they Centrelink office. By the way, I think they could treat people with a bit more dignity than that, to have a big line outside where everyone can see them. That's not treating people with dignity. Having them line up out in the street waiting to go into the Centrelink office.
It's like scenes you might see maybe in America, right?
Yeah, it's shocking. I was taken back, really, and I think people we just need to think a bit about the humanity of what we're doing. But if we're in contact, I know BHP are looking at devices for kids in our situation, so we've made contact with BHP about that. They're also looking at how they actually can pull the other corporates together, or the corporates are coming together to talk about how they can help in the remote areas as well, So
definitely.
So this is a chance for Australians to stand up and look after those that are less needy than you, and if, it can't be the dollar driving everything. This is desperate times, and we need desperate measures to make sure we all get through this.
Of course. All right. So, Uncle, in terms of with corporate Australia, with government, with not-for-profit organisations, and all the others in between that have a reconciliation action plan, what I say to people, and what I am saying, and this is a clear message now to the rest of Australia, if you've got deliverables, then now's the time to deliver on those. If you've got targets to achieve, then now's the time to hit the targets and to reach the targets, instead of thinking, oh, okay, let's just see what the next couple of weeks or next couple of months look like.
Mundanara, I think what we need to do and get the message across, and all of us blackfellas say to the corporate world and the government world with things like RAPs, we're going to measure you how you deal with this in the hard times, not in the good times. It's easy to do all the right things when everything is nice and peachy. It's the reality right now, and we will measure and we'll remember how people deal with this crisis as a test of their commitment to what they say they're going to do in their RAPs. So this is the time now to stand up.
And Uncle, in saying that, in terms of building relations, it's critical, right?
Absolutely critical.
Put these relationships into action, and hopefully we'll look back from here, and hopefully, we will have strengthened relationships with each other, on an individual level, on a, business level, but also on a society level. So on that note, I just want to say, Uncle, it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to yarn with you and to have you on my show. And I look forward to seeing what we do over the coming days. Even things are changing by the hour, right?
Absolutely, they're changing. But I think we, as usual, will do the right thing. We'll live up to the legacy of your dad and all your family, what their vision was for the Murray School, and we'll lead the way.
Too deadly. Well, thank you very much, Uncle Mick, and in my father's language, Wadamuli.
Thank you.
Till next time. And that was Uncle Mick Gooda, who was the former Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner of the Australian Human Rights Commission from about 2009 to 2016. He was also the co-commissioner of the Royal Commission into the Protection and Detention of Children in the Northern Territory, and also currently the chair of the Murray School Board in Brisbane. And my next guest on Black Magic Woman is Deadly Brother Leroy Wilkinson Marr, who's a dynamic and innovative people and culture manager with a demonstrated history of working in the non-profit organisation management industry and has a deadly business called DIRA, DHIIRA. That's all for now. Hope you can join me next time on Black Magic Woman.